Okay, well, we'll get on with what I consider to be the highlight of our schedule today. So we have our practitioners panel, where it's our pleasure to welcome three distinguished and experienced legal practitioners, who all of whom have a tie to WNL as well today. And so I'll just read a little bit about them to introduce them, then hand the panel over to them for them to share their insights and expertise with us. So first, I'll just go in the order that they're seated here. So Jim Pickle. Jim is an associate with DLA Piper, a large international law firm. He's currently in their Reston, Virginia office, but has previously been at their Washington office. And is Baltimore too?
No, just okay. Not all the name.
Okay, well, they have offices everywhere, as you may know. So his practice focuses on corporate and securities transactions, including mergers and acquisitions, venture capital financing, and private placements. His clients are from many sectors, including healthcare, financial and education technology, government contracting, corporate governance, and securities law compliance. He's a 2015 graduate of law school here, and he was active in many roles, including the Moot Court Executive Board. He was an editor of the Journal of Energy, Climate, and the Environment. He was a Birch Scholar, and he was a Bloomberg Law student rep. So you know that he has a lot of insights on research.
Still learn that.
Yeah, exactly. And Julie's over there. You guys met a little bit ago. So, all right. He's also a double general. So his undergraduate degree is from WNL as well. His bachelor's is in business administration, and he earned that in 2012. So welcome, Jim. Next to him is Tanishka Cruz, and Ms. Cruz is a staff attorney at the Legal Aid Justice Center in Charlottesville, where she practices in the immigrant advocacy program and coordinates the center's special immigrant juvenile project. And she was previously an account executive for 3 years with LexisNexis, and her accounts included WNL. So I don't know if, yes, maybe Alan, maybe a couple of the two L's may remember Tanishka from last year when she was with us, or maybe 2 years ago. But anyway, she's a graduate of Drexel University School of Law, and during and after law school, she gained experience as a law clerk and an intern with a Pennsylvania state judge and 2 firms in the Philadelphia area. Ms. Cruz also holds a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism, Public Relations, and Advertising from Temple University. And third is Christopher Russell. Mr. Russell is the elected Commonwealth's attorney for Buena Vista since 2004. He also serves on the WNL faculty as an adjunct professor, and he teaches in our third-year externship program. He's a graduate of Notre Dame Law School, and his career has been dedicated to a variety of public service and government positions since then, including a clerkship with Judge Howler, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, of the Chesterfield County Circuit Court, staff attorney at the Legal Aid Society here in Lexington, assistant Commonwealth attorney for Lexington and Rockford County, and as an adjunct professor at VMI. And Mr. Russell received his bachelor's degree from Dartmouth College. So welcome our panel, please. I'll go ahead and turn it over. They're each going to give a brief overview of research in their worlds, and kind of go in order, and then we'll of course open up to questions from all of you. So please, Jim, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, good afternoon, guys. I'll be brief because I know you've been here all morning. But as Andrew said, I practice corporate law, and I know that's not talked about very much in law school, at least the practice of it. So maybe I'll just dive into quickly what I actually do day in, day out, and then have that kind of parlays into legal research. I think is probably a good route to go. Basically, day in, day out, doing mergers and acquisitions and venture capital financings, like Andrew said, is drafting contracts. So basically, my clients are either venture capital funds, private equity funds who have money to invest in startup companies, or I represent the startup companies themselves with these really smart ideas, but they need funding. So I draft the investment documents between the two entities. In my world, you kind of see a company start with two guys, two people with a really smart idea, and said, you know what, let's just invent it. We'll throw our own money in. We have $50,000. You know how to code. I know how to market. Let's do this. And from there, they need us or another firm, Wilson Sonsini, Cooley, whoever it is, and then we introduce them to these investors, and there's a series of documents that basically bind them together. That says we're going to invest $250,000 or whatever the amount is. Typically, that's like a starting round, and we draft the documents and explain to the startup company what those documents are, what each provision is, because they have no idea. They could just be inventors or artists or people with this really smart idea. So I do that on a day-to-day basis. And the way that kind of parlays into legal research is pretty much my whole practice is statutory based. I'm looking typically at the Delaware Code. That's pretty much where every Fortune 500 company is incorporated. Now, it's different, so Coca-Cola is based in Atlanta, right? I'm sure some of you guys are from Atlanta, but it's incorporated in Delaware. And the reason it does that is because the laws there are already very set. The Court of Chancery is a very important court in our line of business, and the code is very clear on what needs to be done in the corporate governance space, whether it be, I'm sure you guys have heard of the term, the business judgment rule, fiduciary duties, like that all is very important to my clientele. The board of directors of companies, the founders of companies, they think about that day in, day out. And so when they come to us to form their company, to have a board action taken or a stockholder action taken, I'm looking at the Delaware statutes pretty much to start, and then our forms of those documents. Now, unfortunately, we often get calls like, Jim, I have no idea what just happened, but someone called and they're going to sue me. Like, what do I do? And I tell them to calm down, and I tell them we'll look into it. And then that's kind of where the legal research side of like precedent and case law is. So if they're based in the state of Virginia and they're being sued in the state of Virginia, that's when I can do a little bit of Westlaw, a little bit of Lexis, a little bit of Bloomberg, and be able to have talking points for them and be able to refer them to someone else in our firm with more of a litigation specialty. That's typically on like a day in, day out basis for what I do and how legal research is involved. Now, kind of just from a practice point of view for you guys, and I know this is kind of focused towards the summer associate, summer law clerk life. Everything I've done is on the computer. I know some firms still use books. I know some offices still use books. I don't. But one thing you probably take for granted here as a student is that every time you click that button, it costs money. And I'm sure Tanishka can talk to you about this too, is Lexis, Westlaw, and Bloomberg are not cheap services, right? They're companies that have to make money. So something if I were to pay attention, something I even pay attention to too today when I'm looking at corporate law, code, or precedent is really focus on what you want to see. I would do from Practitioner, I'd Google everything first. If I'm looking at the Delaware Code, I would Google DGCL 242, which is a board resolution. I'd start with that, and then you can focus in on what you need to. Or if you're looking for a Virginia case on criminal law, I would Google it first just to get a general idea of where you can go, and then go to the books or Westlaw, whatever it is, like whatever you need to do from there. So on a day-in, day-out basis, that's what I would say I do, and how legal research is kind of incorporated into my practice. It's very statute-driven, very second semester or first year law school-driven, and then from this just from a summer associate point of view, be cognizant of how much you're running up on bills, because partners will see bills and associates will see bills, and that's not to scare you, but you don't want to be the person who's racking $1,000 on this or anything like that. I know. I got a stern talking to him, and I'm like, Jim, why did you do this? I was like, I don't know. It just happened. And they said they don't slap your wrist the first time, but just something to keep in mind, because I know you guys are near the end of the semester and starting internships and that sort of thing. Yeah, that's probably what I got.
Okay, so just to get a sense for who's here, how many 1Ls? Oh, wow. Hey, guys. 2Ls? Cool. Any 3Ls? Not yet. Okay. Yeah, they're all checking in. So the Legal Aid Justice Center is a Virginia organization. We have 3 different locations, one in Charlottesville, that's our main office, then we also have an office in Richmond and Falls Church. And our mission is to help low-income Virginians have access to the legal system, but we also focus on impact litigation that seeks to suss out the, or dismantle systemic issues that keep people poor in Virginia. There are different, hubs or different groups within legal aid. I happen to work for the Immigrant Advocacy Program, and in my group, we focus on a variety of different issues that we address, like employment discrimination that impacts undocumented workers. So if they're not getting paid, if there's sexual harassment at work, will take those cases. I specifically work on special immigrant juvenile cases, which was a project that was started after a crisis occurred at the U.S. border starting in 2014 with unaccompanied minor children from Central America that were arriving at the border. Since 2014, we've had over 150,000 children arrive unaccompanied from Central America fleeing violence. So this particular benefit is a federal benefit that seeks to protect kids that have been abandoned, abused, or neglected by one or both parents. And it's a really interesting hybrid of federal law and state law, because before the first step in all of these cases is to provide these kids with representation before Virginia state courts. So you can imagine, especially in the last year, there's been a lot of rhetoric and a lot of just stuff happening that has impacted the work at the state level, but also the work at the federal side. So it definitely has, when I was offered the position, one of the selling points was every day will be different, and it sure is. Every day is a different kind of, there's a new kind of fire to put out. And having had the opportunity to kind of have my feet on both sides of the state side and then the federal side, and working on both, has presented some interesting legal research questions. Besides the immigrant advocacy program, we also have a civil advocacy program that does consumer rights, housing litigation. They also work on elder law issues. We also have a group that's called Just Children that deals with juvenile justice cases. So it's a varied practice. But definitely, we rely heavily on student help when it comes to student intern help. There's a few clinics that are run out of LAJC, so we have, civil advocacy group, civil rights clinics. So there's constantly a decent flow of students coming in, but we also take on interns to help out with work. So it's oftentimes things will come up, like I said, out of nowhere, and we'll have a need for a memo to be thrown together so that we could, then turn around and present it to the judge. An example would be, I, stated that in order to be eligible for special immigrant juvenile status, you have to have been abandoned, abused, or neglected by one or both parents. What if your parents died? Is that abandonment? I mean, maybe, right? So you'd have to, one of the questions I had for my legal intern over the holiday break when she was helping was, can you do some research to see if there's any case law in Virginia that states that death is a form of abandonment in Virginia, so that we could throw a motion together and put it before the judge. So that'll happen because sometimes you can push back on the judge that's not feeling great about coming to a decision on something. You can say, Judge, before you make a decision, can I put a brief together for you so that you can then decide after we look and see what the case law says. So then being able to have the support that I could pick up, my cell phone, shoot an email over to my intern and say, hey, I need you to take a look at this question and see what you can find is really kind of helpful. And, just having students being aware of where to go to look for this information, kind of how to follow that trail, that legal research trail, and provide a decent, memo back is really what makes one intern stand out next to another. Knowing, like, okay, you presented me with this memo, you've site checked or shepherdized all the cases here. We know that it's good law. That's helpful to have done before you present it to someone that's, it's great to find a case that says exactly what you need it to say. It's horrible to then turn around and realize after the fact that it's been superseded by statute or that something has happened that no longer makes that good law. So before you get to that point, make sure that you're doing that. And that saves a bit of embarrassment and also makes you stellar. Because oh yeah, I shepherdized it and I provided, here's the report. And just being cognizant of the tools that you have that can really save time. I know that both Westlaw and Lexis have access to a system where you can, and maybe you can't use it as students because they want you guys to learn how to do this stuff on your own, but Brief Check, and I think it's like WestCheck, which you can upload a brief into the system, and it spits out like a shepherd's report on everything that was cited to in that brief. So just knowing that you have access to these tools and then being able to take these tools out and say, oh, I can take care of this, I can provide these reports, I can do these things, just really helps people stand out. I have to say that something after being in practice that has really, I wish now in retrospect I would have focused a little bit more on in law school is statutory research, because even though I'm working in state court quite often, I can't impress upon you how much statutory analysis and research we're doing regularly, and having a strong grasp on how to do legislative history research is vital, because that comes up all the time. I think it will come up no matter what area of practice you go into. But you know, it's definitely a place where I wish I would have interned, because I see that, you know, legal aid services sort of really rely heavily on the help that we get from our interns and our summer associates. So if you're looking to really roll up your sleeves and get a lot of experience, it's definitely a good option.
Great. Yes, I was a legal aid intern in law school at the Notre Dame Legal Aid Clinic, and when I went to law school, I thought I wanted to be the kind of lawyer that spent time in a courtroom, went to court, stood up, did an opening, a direct, a cross, a closing, and my law school experience reinforced that. And so that's the kind of lawyer that that I became. And I want to put in a small plug for public service and prosecution also, because it's a very rewarding field, maybe not financially as much, but the sense that you represent the people and that you help the common cause and achieving justice is something that feels good a lot of the time. It unfortunately can be stressful in the real world. Cases that I encounter can be heartbreaking, but it's a great chance to use your legal skills, standing up and using advocacy, trial skills, which I like a lot. But I do a lot of research as a prosecutor, mostly 4th, 5th, 6th Amendment issues, search and seizure, interrogations, confessions, confrontation, double jeopardy, things like that that come up. Luckily, I have a lot of advantages. One of the drawbacks of being in public service is the salaries are not great. But we have this fantastic agency that supports all of the prosecutors in Virginia called the Commonwealth's Attorney Services Council, and they provide training and support. We get these weekly case law updates from them that are a great starting point for doing research. We also get area-specific publications that are updated all the time. So if I have a DUI case that involves, I don't know if you all studied constitutional criminal procedure first year, if that's a second year course. Anyway, so there's this big case a year or so ago that essentially undid parts of Schmerber versus California, which is a case decided the same day as Miranda versus Arizona, interestingly enough. And Justice Brennan wrote the opinion on both of these cases, and everyone knows what Miranda says about in custody interrogations having to be preceded by these warnings. But strangely enough, on the very same day, Brennan writes this opinion in Schmerber versus California that says we have no problem with the warrantless blood draw in a DUI case where police drag someone to the hospital and stick a needle in their arm and test and analyze the results and introduce those into court without a search warrant. The Supreme Court took another look at that in 2015 and said, this is called Birchfield versus North Dakota. It was 2016 is when the opinion was released, where they said, putting a needle in someone's arm is a little bit intrusive, and it sort of reflects the increased concern for privacy against the government on both sides of the political ideological spectrum. So anyway, that's been a huge topic because for patrol officers, a lot of them do not even have a college degree, and we have to keep them up to date with, Fourth and Fifth and Sixth Amendment law on a continuing basis. And so the concern among prosecutors is how do we tell the officers about this? How do we tell them what to do now? If there's going to be more reliance on search warrants going forward for blood and other things. And luckily we have this agency that sends us materials that are very useful. We get updated every year about a 100-page book called the Virginia Prosecutors DUI Manual, and it has these tabs in it that are full of Fourth and Fifth and Sixth Amendment law. So I'm lucky to be able to start with not just general books, but books that are extremely specific to what I do on a day-in and day-out basis. But I also use Westlaw, and I've used Lexis in the past. And I would definitely agree with Jim that it's good to know how to be efficient in your research. Think about the area you want, do a quick search, get one case, make sure that it hasn't been overruled, and then go somewhere else to further your research. The questions that Andrew gave us, and I want to thank Andrew for inviting me and feeding me lunch, which was very good while I'm at it. But I'm looking at a question, I don't know if you guys have these, it says, what research skills or habits distinguish an above average new attorney? I think it's a really good question. The advice I have for you on this, having supervised legal interns for a number of years now, is to pay very close attention to what's being asked of you. The partner or supervisor or attorney that's giving you an assignment is probably not doing it for your educational benefit, even though you're going to get an educational benefit. And what does she want when she gives you that assignment? And she wants an answer to a specific question. And so the advice I have is be succinct. You could spend hours and hours going through the history of the Confrontation Clause and Justice Scalia's lesson about Sir Walter Raleigh in the Crawford case. Or you can give a one-page, 3-paragraph memo, outlining how that applies to a 911 call in a domestic violence case. And there's, that's a relatively straightforward, easy answer there. But the point is, answer the question they've asked you and be succinct about it. And I think they will really appreciate that, and it will make an impression on the partner or person giving you the assignment. The other question that I think is really good is question number 10, how do you organize your research? And this is something I spend a fair amount of time doing because of efficiency. I want to be able to get back to that answer about double jeopardy. I mean, is trespassing a lesser included offense of burglary in the nighttime? This is a question that came up in a trial I had a couple of years ago, and it's probably going to come up again. And I want to be able to go right back to the research I did on that and just pull it out and not have to reinvent the wheel. I remember when I was a law student, I did a internship with an immigration lawyer, actually, and he wanted the succinct answer, and he would just show me sometimes, not when he's asking me to do research, but when he's asking me to prepare a document, something he'd already done, and he said, just change the names on this because I know this will work. And I thought, I want to be able to do this all on my own, and I want to be able to reinvent the wheel so I can learn something. But I abandoned that kind of thinking within a year or two of being in law practice, and I can tell you that when you get out there, you're going to want to get quickly back to an answer that you've studied before. So I save a ton of things in folders and subfolders on my hard drive and cloud drive. And using Westlaw, there's probably a way to do this, but you know, and when I went to law school, we did not have nearly the online world that we have today, because that was the 1990s. But you know, when you click, you find a case you like and you click save to a folder, you can create different folders and name them. I find that pretty useful, but the one thing I don't love about that, and maybe I'm just doing it wrong, is that when you put it in the folder and you go back to that folder, it's just showing you 10 or 15 names of cases in the full citation. So what I do, if I really like a case, I download it to my computer, and then I give it a new name. I take out the full cite. I put in the name, you know, like Pickle versus Commonwealth, and I leave the year in so I know how recent it is. And then I put what it's about, like, you know, consent under detention at a traffic stop. And it turns into sort of a long name, but I save that to one of my folders that I can go back to, and I usually have probably a couple dozen cases in each of these folders, and I find the exact one that deals with the issue that I'm facing that week, and then I can open it up and find the full site if, you know, the judge wants it or something like that. So organize think about how you organize your research. Save everything. These days, you know, you should have plenty of storage in all kinds of different places. So save everything. Another great thing about our services council is when they put on a training, they'll put a Dropbox folder of all the handouts for that training. And even if I'm not going to that seminar, I'll save those and download them to a folder somewhere. And it's a great research. So in the online age, like, hang on to everything you do. You'll find it useful later.
Wonderful. Well, that was a lot of insights packed into a short amount of time. I'm sure there are a few questions up here, so I'll open up the floor. Questions for our panelists? No, I'll throw some out there.
Professor Miller, Russell, sorry. If you work for the state, who gets the bill for your legal research? I mean, how is that billed and charged in that sense? And like, how does that affect how you do legal research?
Usually in my case, it's the locality.
Okay.
So it's a good question. Our salaries are paid by the state, something called the compensation board, but our rent, phones, and subscription services like that are paid by our locality, so we have a budget. But Lexis and Westlaw are pretty good at offering government rates that isn't as
Okay. Well, I'll chime in then. So I know that several of you are working for judges this summer, and I know that at least two of our panelists, maybe three, have a lot of experience directly with either clerkships or working closely with judges as litigators. So maybe some insights about what to expect. Is it, you know, starting out working for a judge, how that might differ from other experiences working for a professor, or the interactions you would have had with another sort of authority to this point. But then when you really jump into the big things with the judge, what's that like? Grace Tanishka, I know you work with.
That's the place where I got into the habit of, I mean, everywhere I go. Andrew was kind enough to have one for me, but I'm just like, I just have the habit of carrying my like legal notepad or some kind of, you know, pen and paper with me everywhere I go. The judge I worked for was very much, like, she had her own style manual. She had her own blue book. So, and I got that before I started working, and it was like, you better learn this and know it and, you know, live by it. It's her thing. So I find that, get to know who your judge is, what their expectations are. She would, go into it, and I really appreciate what you said about, the lawyer or a partner or someone will have a succinct thing that they're looking for, but sometimes we're not so great about being succinct about what we're looking for. So maybe, asking clarifying questions at the end of the discussion. So let me get this right. This is what you want from me. Just that you're on the same page, because they're working at a very high level. They know exactly what they want, but sometimes in relaying that information, we're not great about being specific about what we're looking for. But I would say, get to know exactly if what you're going to be doing is working for a judge. Do they have sort of a specific style that they adhere to? What is that style? And then follow it. And then just be clear on when the questions roll in. And in a judge, in a clerkship sort of environment, the questions will be, it's going to be one of those situations where every day will be sort of different, and different questions are going to come up regularly. So just understanding exactly, where you need to go to get that information. Are you looking at it, is this a case law question, statutory question, regulatory question, depending on the judge that you're dealing with, what area of law, and where are you going to go to look for it. Understanding what the contract with that particular, because I think Virginia courts use Lexis, but I could be wrong about that. It changes. But so if you're going to be clerking in Virginia, then knowing that they use Lexis, if you haven't spent this year sort of on Lexis, spending a couple of weeks, getting a little bit familiar with it, because there are some differences between the systems. So although maybe you've gotten used to one, you want to know what the other one is like. I had the opposite experience going from being the Lexis rep to working at Legal Aid, because we have a Westlaw contract. And for the past 3 years, I've been just 100% in Lexis. So it all takes a bit of adjustment, but you're going to be well-rounded if you understand what the weaknesses and pros are of either system. But just sort of doing a little bit of digging beforehand, just so that you're ready to go from the first day in, is really a good idea.
I forgot the question.
Okay, sorry. I was good. I know some of our students are working for judges this summer, so in particular, obviously, you have a lot of contact with judges, so
Yeah.
insights there.
Right. Yeah, I think they, again, I would just sort of reiterate that they have a ton of cases, a ton of issues they're working on, and they want something readable and succinct, and that's my best advice for them.
And I didn't do a clerkship, but one of my groomsmen did, so he and I would shoot the breeze about it all the time. And this kind of goes along with their points of having precedent, kind of like using the prior forms and things. Ask the prior clerks what their eccentricities are. It was a huge time saver for Robinson Hubbard, a guy who was a year below Donovan, I think a year, maybe 2 years, to ask my friend Donovan, what's Judge Ludwig's, I don't know if you guys work for Judge Ludwig, so I don't think he's a great guy, but ask him for, what kind of writing does he like? I know he liked one particularly, elegant, elaborate style, whereas one of the other judges, Donovan, worked for purely to the point, Iraq, 4 sentences, move on. So I would actually ask if you guys had some sort of relationship with the prior clerk, or W. Nell did, or just reach out if you interviewed with him or her, say, hey, any pointers? I know you're gone now, but anything you would have liked to have known the first 2 weeks before having started this thing? And I'm sure they will share something with you. Everyone does. It's just kind of the tricks of the trade. It's like, well, we all want to pay it forward, I guess, is the way to say it, and they will if you reach out to them.
I think that's really good advice. I thought of something else. Yeah, and that makes me think of, if I have a question, I did this today on an issue in a case coming up, do not be afraid to ask. Maybe don't go to the senior partner or the absolute top boss if you're a little bit unsure. But go to someone and say, here's my issue. Am I on the right track? Ask a lot of questions. With judges, another thought that came to mind is if you're working for a trial court judge, which is my clerkship was with a trial court judge. They do not like to be reversed on appeal. So if they're asking you for a memo because they have to give, and they're probably going to ask for a memo because there's a case where they're going to write a letter opinion. They don't write, too many published opinions, but they'll write these informal letters, well, they're formally written, but they're not published, to counsel deciding an issue. If the losing side of that appeals, they do not like to be reversed. So I would say, don't go out on any limbs, because maybe you talk to the judge and you both agree that the side that looks like he's going to prevail, the person's kind of a jerk, or the lawyer's kind of a jerk. So don't find a need to get too creative, because they want to know what the precedent is and take a position that will stand up on appeal.
I have a question too about, you mentioned that you do most of your legal research online. Do you see that just as like the transitioning of legal research, or basically interns really do need to start with in the print stuff?
I think it probably depends on what office and what area you're practicing in. I know when I was so I summered in our DC office, and then I moved about a year and a half ago to our Reston office. Our DC office still had a library. The corporate team didn't use it so much. A lot of litigation team, products liability, patent people did, and I know they still pull books, both because they were used to books and because it was oftentimes actually more efficient just to go to the book, flip back to the, I should know this, the back pamphlet, and the index, and scoop through, and but exactly, pocket part, yes, exactly. I wasn't sure. I think it's whatever you're comfortable with is first and foremost what I'd go with. But when you're an intern, I would use this time, like we've all been saying, to really stretch your boundaries, because you don't know where you're going to be. Flexibility is key. Tanishka was Lexis, now she's Westlaw. Sometimes Lexis flips on with Virginia. I'd use this time when you're having some downtime to make yourself more adaptable and flexible. And I've heard of judges and people saying, "We only have Westlaw. Do you use Westlaw?" I've heard of questions being asked like that, and obviously the answer is yes. So yeah, I'm going to use Westlaw, but I would try both. So
And a lot of these treatises and books that are being purchased now also come with a thumb drive, so that the firm or organization or government agency can then put the thumb drive, resource on, whatever internal system everybody uses. So even though I know, for example, that we have this like Virginia family law Bible, that was written by a professor at UVA, I know we have it in print and I know where it is. It's in my office, but I prefer to just go on our internal system, look at the PDF version of it, and just control find what I'm looking for. It just makes my life easier. So just understanding what you're working with. Okay, you have books on site, but do you also have access to those books electronically? And maybe during your orientation, asking questions like that so that you know what's available might help you save some time.
This is, I guess, for everybody, but we had a session today that was talking kind of about securities and like keeping your data secure. So what are your day-to-day process of keeping your data secure at your job?
The firewall, city installed firewall and software that I'm not responsible for anything about. The one thing I do is I work in a small government office. People are coming in all the time. I'll be working on something, and Univista is a quirky little place, and I'll be working on something, really important and sensitive and may have, you know, some, I don't know, a video of a controlled drug purchase, and, you know, we don't want anyone in the community to see the identity of the guy working undercover with the police. And I'll be sitting there looking at it, taking notes of the time that things happen, and all of a sudden a guy will come in with like a tank sprayer to spray for, you know, insects, and we'll just like walk right in. Or someone coming in to change the water jug, you know, or something. So I try to be conscious of that, and if I get up from my desk, I lock my screen. So now in a bigger firm setting, the access is probably not exactly the same. But yeah, it's a good question and something to be aware of. Yeah.
I mean, I'm actually in the same boat, Chris, and I on a day-to-day, I have no idea what's going on with the firewall in the cloud or whatever that is. We have a data management site. So, like, you can save a document onto our data management site, similar to Google Drive, and someone else can click it and then open that document and use it. But I think it's, at that point in time, really just up to the IT team, I'm not going to lie. And much like Chris is, you know, the bug spray, the water gun, we had people come in the office wiping the windows and taking out the trash, and it's something that on a day-to-day you probably don't think about malpractice. Are we possibly committing it? Maybe, you know, depending, because we all have documents lying everywhere, right? Like, that's just part of the nature of the business of being in law. You have papers on your desk and you're doing work, and there's sensitive information, whether you're a family law attorney or whether you're a venture capital lawyer. So on a day-to-day basis, I'd go with what Chris said, lock your drawers. I do that every night before I go to bed. I lock my computer. When you step away from your computer, I know I don't do this when I was in the library, Control Alt Delete and lock it so no one then can like get into it. I think that's probably where most people run into those issues. I've never read ethical opinions of that. I'm sure there are ethical opinions on it, but I'd say just from a practical perspective, do that. Lock your computer, lock your door when you leave for the evening, and maybe again ask people at your firm. Like I wouldn't ask the senior partner, hey, am I committing malpractice by doing this? But like ask like, so guys, what's the protocol with sending emails out to our Gmail or putting stuff on Google Drive at nighttime and working from home? Maybe that sort of thing.
I got another question for you guys. So, what kind of resources do you use, and like any kind of subscriptions or publications, to stay abreast of developments in your areas of law? I think that's important, like current awareness. Like how do you guys stay abreast?
So I think like bar organizations is really key if you're in a specialized area. For example, in immigration law, we have the American Immigration Lawyers Association, and through that like I get the daily 10 or whatever, right, bright and early. It's the first email that I kind of look at, and it kind of gives me the top 10 things that are going on that I should, you know, be cognizant of as my day starts. And then there are a number of specialized listservs that you can elect to be a part of, and I find those to be really helpful because those are, you know, it's a group of attorneys that are practicing in a specific area. So an example of a good listserv that I follow is a child collaborative, immigration lawyer group, and they're specifically discussing issues that impact immigrant youth in Virginia, right? So we're constantly seeing, okay, so I'm going before this judge, does anybody have any thoughts on this judge and how they approach this, and doing, you know, there's this complicated issue on the federal end, what do you guys think? So it's just a way of kind of staying on top of what's going on, and, you know, sharing information across the board as you're confronting issues, and then sort of getting that organized is, you know, really important too, because I could see something in the listserv today, right? Like, oh, that's good. I need to put it somewhere so that 3 weeks from now, when I run into that, I can quickly find that email that, you know, pointed out, oh, it's this case that you need to cite to, or this statute that you need to work through this issue. So I definitely think, like, and as students, you can join these organizations. There's student chapters, and it's usually cheaper, if not free, to be a part of those bar associations. So if you do have a specific interest, I would go ahead and, you know, even just the ABA, I'm sure, like through Washington, I think all students got like the ABA, but there are even more specialized ones that you can join.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. Luckily, we have pretty good, like I said, statewide support that sends us stuff on a weekly and sometimes daily basis, and then also an online forum with questions about, and you want to have this this defense expert, and can you tell me what to expect? I have them in the trial next week or something. So I would also say this is not directly on point, but if you know, there's so many resources out there, sometimes you get overwhelmed by stuff that comes your way. But if you have a good idea of what you're interested in doing, and you're doing that kind of work over the summer, and you know, you realize someone in that firm or office has a really good resource, like say it's a book, you know, think about buying that for yourself if it's $50 or something. You know, I know you've got a lot of textbook expenses and everything else, but if you find something you really like, please give that some thought.
And piggybacking off of what Chris said, if you find, I found this, maybe not as a summer associate, I think I might have done it once or twice, but as a full-time attorney now, if you find a case or a magnet periodical or anything like that that you think is pertinent to people who are important in your life, like partners and supervising attorneys, send it to them. They won't, most of them won't see it as you know, looking for attention. They'll see it as, wow, Joe is taking a really, you know, is really looking into what we do, and I appreciate it. Did I already know it? Yeah, but he's obviously taking interest. Or, wow, that really is important. That's going to help my practice somehow because I do products liability, and one jurisdiction over, this important ruling came down. I mean, people can't be looking at everything at all points in time, and I Chris probably tested this better, but I know my partners have said, oh, well, Jim, I appreciate you saying that. I think that was really interesting. I went to that business event. For me, a lot of the stuff I look at is tech business events, like pitch contests and investor conferences. I'll just send them to partners and other counsel I know are shopping around and making the rounds. Say, hey, I found this one in Georgetown. I know you live over there. Just thought you might want to know. Oh, yeah, I didn't hear about that one. Thank you. I would, from a practice point, I might do that every now and again. I think that'd be useful. And it shows you're taking an interest, and it might help you one day.
So one more thing that I wanted to add also is don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call someone. Like, that's something that I've always kind of done, and I find that 99% of the time, the person on the other side of, you know, that conversation is going to welcome, you know, that information. So an example is we just took a case up to the Court of Appeals in Virginia, and no one really at the organization had a lot of state appellate court experience. So I, in doing some Google searches, found an expert in Virginia appellate litigation. And I just picked up the phone and I just asked him a few questions that I had, and he was so helpful, and now he's a part of the litigation team. He's, you know, volunteered to help us through it, like sign his name on to briefs and help us coordinate the effort. So I just think it's really important to, you know, if you're hitting a wall, if there's not a lot of people in your organization who know about something, don't be afraid to just, you know, find the expert and ask them. Maybe they'll turn you down, maybe they'll completely ignore you, but you never know unless you actually reach out.
And maybe the last thing for me, and don't forget me, is interestingly enough, my boss was on Above the Law a few weeks back, for a good thing though, not a bad thing. and Tanishka made me think about this. He had come up with he just became he now runs the DC office too. And he met with the associates at a big lunch they have once a month, and he had a list of 10 things, you know, I wish I'd done as an associate. And number one was meet in person first, phone second, email third. Don't rely on email. I know in texting, I know we all do, but just go to offices and knock on doors. Hey, are you available? Can I chat with you? That's the best way to get your answer. If you call, people can click voicemail, like divert, and go to voicemail or just not pick up. Or people see your email, and they may not answer for 5 hours. Like, I would really implore people, especially law students, because I know we all kind of like do our own thing, and then we all come in. Just go to offices and knock on doors when you're in your internship. Go meet people. Go be nice. Like, just go ask for people's history and what they did, because it might really help you determine what you want to do, what kind of lawyer you want to be, and then, yeah.
Well, okay, so as a follow-up on that, are there any publications you guys follow in particular? I'm thinking along the lines of, especially, I know, Jim, you with Bloomberg, I'm thinking in particular with your kind of transactional focus, what kind of stuff? I mean, we saw earlier some the B&A reports, these types of things.
So the B&A reports are great. DLA actually used to be a big Bloomberg proponent, and I love the reports because one, what we do is tax driven, and I know they do a lot of tax reports and not the indistinguishable tax code that is our system, the IRC, but just boiled down stuff that's very relevant, really pertinent, and easily relatable to clients. I'd say the B&A reports. I know this sounds dumb, but just if you like business and you're kind of read the Wall Street Journal. I know that sounds really
SNAP. Doing the SNAP program where they can get New York Times, Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal through W&L. So
I would do that. Being able to talk somewhat intelligently about what's going on in the world, in the business world, is extremely important. I know we're in a bubble of law school and reading constitutional law and criminal law and international law, but just being able to understand what's going on in the business world is extremely important for me. So I read the Wall Street Journal every day, read B&A stuff. If you want to do venture capital stuff, there's Invindo, which is just kind of a tech subscribe online magazine. PitchBook is also the biggest one that I read every day. It's the same thing, top 10 quick hits, here's what's going on, Snap's going public, someone's getting Series A, Series B, blah, blah, blah.
I don't really have a lot of free time, unfortunately, to like, especially like this year. I feel like this has been like the busiest 3 months of my life. But I think like having some, the services that kind of, will give you like push forth like here are the headlines is really helpful, because then that points you to the different, whether it's the Times or the Post or whoever's reporting on that specific issue. So finding sort of your niche and then finding whatever is going, whatever organization is going to kind of grab those articles for you and send them is a way of keeping in the know. I also am a big like podcast fan, so I'll, because that way while I'm driving to work or driving to I can listen to something and then get kind of caught up with what I need to know for the day. But I think at least where you are now, if you're going to be doing federal practice, for example, you're going to live and die by the federal rules. So knowing what the treatises and what the practice guides are that are clutch to those areas is going to really help at first, because those are really going to lay out what you need to know. And knowing what you have once you get there is great.
Last questions? All right, well, thank you so much.